My name is Staff Sergeant Mason. I'm 47 years old, and I served in the U.S. Army for 21 years. These days, people mostly just see the uniform and the clipboard, but there was a time when I was the first breath this base took every morning. I got in at 0500, always did. The sun wasn't even considering coming up yet. I'd park in the same spot by the west gate, step out with my thermos in one hand and a folded memo in the other, boots already dusty from the walk across gravel. The base had its own kind of silence before dawn. Not the peaceful kind, but something tighter, more expectant. First stop was the operations panel. I checked the backup generator readouts, make sure the security system hadn't flagged anything overnight. Then I'd move through the main corridor, hitting light panels, unlocking entry points, testing comms. The coffee machine in the admin center took 15 minutes to brew a full pot, so I always started it early. Real coffee, too, grounds I brought from home. Nobody ever asked, but I knew it made a difference. While that brewed, I'd run diagnostics on the intercom, scan the training schedule to make sure classrooms were properly booked, and double-check the inventory logs for supply deliveries. If weather was rough, I'd throw an extra tarp over the outdoor ammo crates or salt the loading ramp to prevent slips. I didn't have to do those things. They weren't written in my job description, but they were mine, had been for years. No one else was there to notice when I turned the base from dark and dormant to alert and functional. That was the point. When the first squad walked in around 0630, they'd see warm lights, clear floors, charged radios, ready gear. They'd think it just happened that way, like magic, but it was just me, working before the clock even started ticking. I never needed credit. Didn't hang around waiting for praise. I did it because it was right. Because when things ran smoothly, soldiers got to focus on the mission instead of stumbling over broken printers or empty briefing rooms. That mattered to me. Still does. They used to call it quiet leadership. These days, most folks don't even see it. But I've always believed the best leaders are the ones who don't need a stage. The ones who hold the line without needing to raise their voice. I took pride in that silence. Not just because it made the place run, but because it reminded me of what it meant to serve. Not for recognition, not for promotions, but because you said you would, and you do. Every morning, I'd walk through that base like I was winding a watch, click by click, room by room, until everything was right where it needed to be. And when the first footsteps echoed through the corridor, I was already at my desk, sipping my coffee, already done with the part no one ever saw. It was a Tuesday when Major Bryant first stepped onto base. You could tell he was West Point the second you saw him. The kind of crisp polish that never got mud on it, even after a field inspection. He was young, maybe mid-30s, with that sharp fade haircut and a jawline that looked cut from marble. Carried himself like he was already a colonel. His voice was loud in the quiet places, full of enthusiasm, as if he thought motivation could substitute for understanding. First few days, he just observed. Walked the halls with a tablet in hand and a smile that felt more like branding than warmth. He asked a lot of questions, but never waited long enough to hear real answers. Used phrases like synergy and cohesion and culture mapping. At first, I kept to my rhythm. In at 0500, out after debrief. The system stayed clean, the base stayed functional. He didn't say much to me at first, just nodded if we crossed paths. But I noticed his eyes lingering when he saw the coffee already brewed or the comms already synced, like he was trying to figure out how those things happened without his approval. The first sign of change came in a morning staff meeting. He stood at the front like he was pitching a product, talked about aligning values, eliminating imbalance, fostering a new chapter of collective rhythm. I stayed quiet, as I always did. My job wasn't to debate, it was to execute. Later that week, he pulled me aside near the motor pool, tried to be friendly about it, said he admired my discipline, but it might be creating pressure. Some of the newer soldiers felt like they had to show up early just to keep up. He smiled like he'd solved a moral crisis. Then he asked if I could start reporting at 0700 instead of 0500. Said it would help balance morale. I didn't flinch, didn't argue, just nodded and said, "Yes, sir." His smile widened like I'd just validated some new leadership theory. But something shifted in my gut. I wasn't angry, just off-center. Like someone had moved a compass half a degree and expected me to navigate just the same. The next morning, I stayed home longer, drank my coffee slower, sat in the truck till 6:45, watching the fog cling to the gates. When I walked in at 0700 sharp, the lights were still dim. The air felt different, cold, stale, unbothered. I didn't touch the comms panel, didn't flip the safety check clipboard. I just sat at my desk and logged in like any other soldier. No early prep, no morning routine, just the work listed on my orders. No one said anything that first day. Maybe not even the second. But I felt the delay ripple. Emails unanswered, reports sent late. The vending machine in Rec Hall still jammed. Little things, quiet fires. Bryant didn't seem to notice. He strutted the corridors with his tablet and big ideas. Kept saying we were entering a new chapter, but the pulse of the base was off. Like the walls themselves knew something had changed. By the end of the week, I started bringing a government-issue mug instead of my own. Didn't refill the first aid kits unless I got a direct request. Stopped folding the briefing chairs back into place. It wasn't neglect. It was obedience. He wanted everyone equal, so I became equal. No more, no less. I started coming in at 0700, like the major asked. No earlier. I sat in my truck until the minute hand touched the hour, then stepped through the gate like it was just another day. But it wasn't. Lights in the main corridor flickered when I walked in. The control room still sat in overnight mode, displays half lit, alarms blinking quietly in maintenance test loops. The air smelled off, not foul, just unfinished, like the building hadn't been told it was morning yet. The first briefing room was dark, no lights, no projector. A young lieutenant stood by the console, tapping buttons that wouldn't respond. He looked back when I passed, unsure whether to ask for help. I nodded, kept walking. The comm sync hadn't run. Network lag slowed the dashboard updates by half an hour. Schedules were off by minutes, but in the Army, a few minutes might as well be chaos. No one said it, but I saw it on their faces. Tension clung to their eyes. By Wednesday, nothing was technically broken, but nothing was right either. Radios chirped without replies. Supplies missed their timestamps. Training squads waited outside locked storage sheds. It was small stuff, stupid stuff, the kind of stuff I used to handle before the sun showed up. Bryant kept smiling, kept saying we were adapting. Soldiers nodded along, but their eyes scanned the halls like they were listening for something that wasn't there. I knew what they were missing. They just didn't know they missed it yet. I didn't refill the cleaning supply log, didn't flag the printer error. The base ran, technically, but it stopped humming, like a machine with loose gears, still moving, but no longer smooth. By Friday, I heard someone whisper in the mess line, Said the mornings felt heavier now. Another replied they missed the smell of fresh coffee by 0600. I stirred my eggs and didn't say a word. Nobody blamed me. They didn't have to. They just looked around and wondered what had shifted, what gear had slipped, what pulse had quieted. I kept walking past flickering lights and silent command consoles, past officers staring too long at late reports. I answered what I was asked, did what was assigned, nothing more. The week ended with no explosion, no shouting, just a bass that felt like it exhaled wrong and never caught its breath again. On Sunday afternoon, I pulled an old notebook from my desk drawer. Black cover, yellow spine, government issued, barely touched. I wrote the date on the first page and started listing everything I used to do between 0500 and 0700. Unlocked security gates, ran diagnostics on perimeter feeds, calibrated the PA system before Reveille, brewed coffee for 4 buildings, checked supply requests, reset printers, verified meal counts. Every task had a time, every time had a reason, and every reason led to someone else being able to do their job a little better, a little smoother, without ever thinking twice. I filled 10 pages that first night. Memory came easier than I expected, like the tasks were muscle memory in my pen, not just my hands. I kept writing, daily. I included weather shifts, shift overlaps, notes on backup batteries for the satellite uplink. Minor things, unwritten things. The work no one saw and no one logged. It wasn't about revenge. I wasn't building a case. I was documenting the skeleton no one else seemed to know existed. By Tuesday, the notebook had its own place on my desk, next to my badge. I didn't hide it. I didn't flaunt it. But I made sure people saw it when they asked questions that used to have silent answers. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, but it was deliberate. 1 page at a time. Memory made solid. They called it a systems glitch at first. Something about a network sync delay. But anyone who had been on base longer than a month knew that wasn't true. The front gate stayed locked until 0730. Trucks idled out front, deliveries stalled. No one had the updated access codes. Inside, hallways stayed dark. The mess hall didn't open. Junior officers stood in clumps, glancing at clipboards that should have been pre-filled. Nothing was ready. The main conference room sat cold, lights off, no projector. The chairs were stacked, untouched. A colonel walked in and paused, looked around, then back at his watch. The briefing was supposed to start 10 minutes ago. The daily ops report hadn't been printed. The command feed lagged. The security overlay blinked red. Backup plans? None. Because for years the backup was a man, not a manual. Lance corporals whispered in the hall. Lieutenants paced with phones against their ears. One major barked out, asking where the hell the login was for the logistics dashboard. No one had it. No one knew who used to set it up. In the corner of admin, someone finally asked the real question. Who used to take care of all this? The room went quiet for half a beat. Then a voice, low but certain, said it. Mason. It rolled through the ranks like a code word. Staff Sergeant Mason. Mason used to do that. Mason always had that fixed. Mason had the backups. Mason made the coffee. Mason unlocked the doors. Mason ran the checks. The morning unraveled fast. It flagged 2 compliance errors. The kitchen missed the meal prep signal. Medical dispatch asked why the emergency alert test hadn't run. They were told it was someone else's job now, but no one knew whose. Bryant showed up late. His collar was pressed, his voice loud, trying to project calm. But he couldn't fake over the panic. He asked the ops desk why the boardroom wasn't ready. They shrugged. No setup request had come through. He asked who had cleared the data panel for the morning brief. Nobody had. The feed was empty. He ran through offices asking for answers. He got shrugs, silence, and one repeated response. Mason handled that. Someone even joked, "Is Mason on vacation?" The joke didn't land, because the truth was heavier. Mason wasn't gone. He was right there, sitting at his desk, right on time, doing exactly what was asked of him, nothing more. By 0900, the base was running on fumes. No crashes, no alarms, just a quiet dysfunction. The kind that made everyone a little slower, a little more nervous. The kind that made people start realizing how much they had never noticed before. The hum was gone, the rhythm was off, and the name on everyone's lips wasn't the commanding officer. It was the man who used to move unseen and keep the whole thing breathing before the sun even rose. And now they all wanted to know the same thing. "Where's Sergeant Mason?" The first thing that hit the base that morning wasn't reveille. It was confusion. The gates were still locked at 0615. Vendors waited with deliveries. The supply team stood idle by the docks. No one had the access code. The mess was behind. No prepped meal lists. Kitchen crew fumbling with estimates. One cook shouted over the noise, asking where the early shift rosters were. The projectors were off. No briefings displayed. The tactical room was dead silent, except for the sound of one young lieutenant frantically flipping pages. In the command wing, lights flickered as the automated diagnostics ran late. Someone forgot to initiate the calibration script. A tech officer whispered that it usually just ran itself. It didn't. A dozen lieutenants stood outside the briefing room. No one had the clearance to unlock it. A colonel arrived, eyebrows raised, asking why nothing was ready. People started glancing around. A junior officer muttered, "Doesn't Sergeant Mason usually handle this?" The silence that followed said more than any answer could. The CO walked through the hallway, coffee untouched, brows furrowed. He asked who had set the early comms. Nobody answered. Someone said, "I think Mason used to." Everywhere I used to step was now a hesitation. Every place I'd once passed through left a hollow behind. By 0700, the operations desk was flooded. 3 calls from HQ asking for reports. A 4th from logistics demanding clarification on last night's fuel inventory. I arrived at 0600, on the dot, no earlier, no keys in hand. Just me, walking past it all. Eyes forward, expression calm. People looked, some stared, a few nodded. Nobody said a word. One admin asked the room, "Who used to prep the reports again?" Someone answered, "Mason, just Mason." The systems were intact, but the rhythm was gone. It wasn't sabotage, it was subtraction. The CO muttered quietly, almost to himself. We never even noticed how much he did, and the base kept moving, slower now, disjointed, off balance, like a watch that ticked, but couldn't tell time. Major Bryant was gone by Friday. No speech, no ceremony, just a quiet shift in the chain of command, a new name on the schedule, and one less shadow walking, the hallways like he owned them. They didn't say much when they called me up the following Monday, just that the colonel wanted to see me. I stepped into his office and stood at ease until he motioned for me to sit. He didn't talk about the mess, didn't mention the notebook. He just said they were creating a new position, something long overdue. Strategic advisor for base operations. He said I wouldn't have to take it, but they'd be honored if I did. I nodded, told him I appreciated the offer, said I'd give it thought. Then I went home early, walked my dog, cooked something that didn't come from the mess hall, sat on the porch for a while and listened to nothing. No radios, no intercoms, just wind. I slept in until 5:30 the next morning, still early by most standards, late by mine. I didn't rush, just laced up my boots, grabbed my mug, and drove back to base. The lot was mostly empty when I pulled in, the building still dark, still quiet, but not heavy like before. This time it felt right. I walked in through the side gate, swiped in like always. Lights came on as I moved past them. My steps echoed just enough to let the building know I was back. No one was expecting me. No task list waited. But I knew what needed doing. Coffee first, then systems, then all the little things I didn't need to write down because they were already part of me. I didn't do it for recognition. I never did. Some places just work better when someone shows up early enough to care. And that morning, as the first drip of coffee hit the glass and the hum of the bass returned, I didn't smile. But I felt it. Balance. Restored. I never kept that notebook so someone would see it. I didn't write those lines hoping for recognition. I wrote them because order matters, and because even silence has a shape when it's kept by steady hands. What I did each morning wasn't about pride. It wasn't about being the first one in or the last one out. It was about knowing that someone needed to be the quiet answer before the questions even formed. There's a kind of peace in preparation, in making sure others don't have to pause or wonder. Most of the time, no one noticed, and that was the point. I didn't want them to. The calm before réveillé, the clean systems, the unlocked doors, that was my role, not on the chart, not in the manual, but it belonged to me, and I carried it with the same weight as any mission briefing or field order. No one ever said thank you for those early hours, and I never waited to hear it. I measured the value of my work by the quiet it allowed others to have. Even now, if they told me it was optional, if no one asked again, I'd still show up tomorrow. Still brew the coffee, still check the locks. Not because I need the job, but because that kind of duty stays in your bones. And when something lives that deep, you don't need a reason. You just keep going. That's what keeps the hum alive.